What's up, Spellslingers? My name is Garion John Wells.
I'm Drew Flitton.
And I'm Cory Janibagian. And this is Untap
Upkeep.
Drink. Beer up. How's it going, guys? Today we are going to be talking about some of the products we've neglected in the recent months.
It turns out we tried to start a Commander series, and then there's way too much other stuff to talk about. And we finally had an opportunity to do it again, and this time we decided we have to have all three people on it.
Yeah, so for the first time,
welcome our special guest.
I'm here, guys.
We're doing Commander 2014. So these are the pre-constructed decks that WOTC released following their invention of the Precons in 2011. So they did 2011, 2012 was Commander Arsenal, then they had 2013, and then 2014 was a special year because these are all monocolored decks.
And we kind of hinted that we were going to talk about this stuff ages ago when we talked about the Color Wheel series, so we're finally owning up to that. And with that, we are going to condense all of these decks down into one episode. So it is going to be a longer episode, but hopefully it's less time spent on these as is reasonable.
Yeah, we kind of get it. You can look them up. They are an older product, but it's still worth talking about the evolution of these products as a whole.
Yeah, I think they are significant in some ways, and there's definitely some goodies in these decks.
Yeah, these decks are really good about epitomizing what each color does, and I think that that's important in and of itself in Commander, as well as just kind of like having a pre-constructed deck that uses Planeswalkers as commanders, which is kind of a curveball for a lot of people, and it's something that is still interesting to talk about now.
It was a game changer back in the day, and people were like, oh, what is going on?
This is broken, this is OP.
Yeah, it's essentially going against some of the rules of Commander, and so it was a big deal, and now we've repeated that, and we all have opinions, but this was the first set to do it.
Yep. And so before we get into all of that, obviously we have our beers, but we want to remind you guys, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter.
The discussion is wonderful. We like hearing the comments, the messages, but also we're gearing up to really take over the YouTube universe. We're pitching all the gear to the crew to try and figure out video, but really as much engagement as we can get on YouTube, the better. I think that's probably going to end up being our hub since we're going to try and do video and show you guys all these cards.
It's not to say we're going to ignore all of the actual just podcast listeners.
Believe me when I tell you, we've stressed over the details of how to make sure this podcast stays a great podcast and becomes a good YouTube channel so much that it's almost unreasonable.
It's why it's taken us so long.
Yeah, but we're really trying to do both things really well.
And to that effect, we have a survey that we'd like you guys to fill out. Just kind of what you guys want from us. Part of that is with the format of the episodes. We're about to dive into these beers, and is that something that you guys want us to do at the beginning of the episode, middle episode? We kind of break it up to where we have a first initial novel impression of the beers, and then talk about the magic content, and then jump back into the beers again to kind of see how they've developed and changed, and whether or not our opinions have changed on them. And I think that that's important, but if that's not what is interesting to everyone, then that's something that we kind of want to know. What do you guys want to hear, see? Give us your feedback.
Yeah, we're trying to do this for the viewers, so we want to know how you guys would like the show to go. That survey is going to be in the show notes on the podcast and on YouTube. It's super quick. It's only 10 questions, so it's not like it's going to take you a while, but it is going to give us some really good information on how we move forward. So.
Yeah, every little bit helps, guys.
Yeah. And if there's something that you think we didn't cover on that survey, this was meant to be just like a quick and dirty, just give us raw information. But if you think there's something else that you want us to help change or to contribute to, send us a message, let us know. Your opinion matters. We have I would say fair number of viewers at this point compared to where we were a year ago, right?
100%.
0 is less than everything. We are growing, and you will help shape what this podcast and what our videos look like going forward. So we do take your criticism very seriously, as well as just suggestions and the compliments and the comments that you've given us. And so we're trying to provide an avenue for you to feel like it matters, because it does. It's just hard for a lot of people, I think, to see that. And so this is kind of our way to bring that to the audience.
That being said, we are all chomping at the bit to get to these beers.
It's the only reason I'm here, guys.
That's why that's how we get Cory to come.
I was like, wait, did you say free beers? Okay. Yeah.
He didn't know we were doing a podcast till episode 12. We're drinking beer.
I
you guys are getting paid for this?
I mean,
No.
So, first one is the one, I think it's the last of the Oregon beers that I brought back from almost like 9 months ago. And so, this is the Three Creeks Brewing Company's 5 Pine Chocolate Porter. So, these guys are out of Sisters, Oregon, which...
It's a weird town name.
I mean, it's just across the street from Brothers, but it's...
Okay.
But no, Three Creeks is a pretty solid brewery. I had a couple of theirs when I was in Oregon. I didn't actually get to visit the brewery itself, but I was really excited to bring this on the show because, I mean, obviously I love porters, and this is like the perfect time of year to drink them. But Garion was really starting to get into darker beers, specifically heavier interest in porters than stouts. And so at the time, I was like, this is going to be perfect for the show.
And lo and behold, you're the one drinking it.
Oh, I'm not going to like just let a porter sit out there and just not be the one to drink it. So on the nose, kind of a little bit malty, sweet, oddly alcoholic, which is kind of weird because it's only 6.2%. IBUs is like...
Just like us.
That hurts. It kind of has that bitterness as well from the like roasted malts. And it's sitting at 40 IBU, so there is a decent amount of hop characteristics to it. But I feel that the hops really comes in more as the earthy kind of flavors than the actual like bitter flavors that we get out of hops. But it's really pretty nice. I think just nailing it down to a chocolate porter is kind of where they're at.
Yeah, just on the nose, it smells just like chocolate and exactly how a porter would smell. I'm not getting a lot of alcohol, so that's interesting that you said that there was in the taste. It is jet black. Cannot see through this.
Yeah, I mean, we only have a little bit left after Cory spilled it all over the table, but...
Yeah, check that video out right here. It is incredibly bitter. It is a lot more bitter than I thought it was going to be. And it's interesting because it is that hop bitter, not that chocolate bitter.
Yeah, there's like a little bit of chocolate bitter, but like, yeah.
But you can definitely taste the alcohol.
Yeah, which is surprising. I mean, obviously this has been sitting around for, I don't know, 8 months or something like that. So it has been a while since I got it. And perhaps that's, changed the characteristics of the flavor palette that you have.
Yeah, but you definitely get all of that malty, just roasted goodness. And then the chocolate is right in the middle. And then just fades out into some hops. That's a really solid beer.
Yeah, it's got that lingering bitter from the hops, but it's still got like a classic round porter taste.
Yeah.
It's a good beer.
Super smooth.
All right, the next one we got, Cory, I literally got because of the name in the can. It looks pretty dope.
Yeah, you guys got to check out. I was looking at some other beers that these guys do, and their can art is awesome.
Yeah, always 10 out of 10.
It's Illuminated Brew Works, and they are out of Illinois. And this one is the Junior Astronaut Juice. So this is a double dry hopped IPA, 6% alcohol. I could not find any IBUs on any website, which is super weird because especially with IPAs, you'd think that they would emphasize IBUs. But so we just put 20,000 IBUs. So
yeah. It was at least over 9,000.
Matt checks out. So right off the bat, it's just smells like your standard juicy. It's very, very citrusy. It's got a beautiful orange amber color. You can't see through it. Super hazy. But on the flavor, you do have a lot of those citrus notes. It's very, very mellow. But maybe that's just because I was drinking that chocolate stout. Chocolate porter. It's nowhere near as bitter as I thought it would be for a dry hopped IPA. But it's so smooth. Usually when you hear dry hopped, it's at the very, very end and it's super, super potent. Like you just get hit with hops. But this was like the most chill hops you've ever had.
Yeah, dry hops really add to the aromatic qualities of the beer more than the actual flavor. But
it's super good.
That is really good.
It's really refreshing.
Really, really hoppy, but not really bitter, which is weird. It is kind of leafy, like vegetation.
Nice vegetable.
Yeah, but it's fresh and crisp. All those things. It's got some citrus to it. It's definitely a refreshing, easy to drink beer. It's overly hopped for my taste. I don't think I'd have a bunch of them because I'm not an IPA guy, but it's nowhere near as bitter as some of the IPAs that I've really cringed at. That's way more drinkable than just a standard double IPA.
Yeah, smell is incredible. It is like beautifully dry hop. You get all of like that hop aroma without any like the negative kind of dry bitterness to it that you can kind of get out of some like overly hopped beers. The flavor is super nice. The smoothness of it, like, was
so
super
good.
It's like it's both smooth and crisp, which is a weird combination because I feel like smooth beers generally kind of like fade out, but this one has like a really nice finish.
It's got like a bite, but in a good way.
And it does have some of that, like classic hop bitterness, but it's not like grating. It's kind of just like...
But it totally tastes just fresh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super good. Okay, Garion, what do you got?
This is the North Coast Brewing Company Prankster, spelled with a Q, Belgian-Style Golden Ale. It's sitting at 7.6% alcohol, which clocks this golden ale in at the highest ABV of all three of our beers, which is weird. But we've got 20 IBUs. It's a little bit hazy through the glass looking at it. Oh, yeah. That's my kind of beer.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
It's just classic beer flavors. You know what I mean? Like that malty kind of alcohol beer. There's no weird off characteristics to it. There's not a lot of hop. Just fresh, slightly citrusy maybe, but not like it's not fruity. You know what I mean? It's just got like a little bit of tart.
So on the nose, definitely like a Belgian-style yeast. That's kind of got that funkiness, a little bit earthy on the smell. Yeah, I mean, the flavor definitely matches up what Garion's saying. But again, it has that kind of European flair, I guess is kind of how I've been describing it recently. It has the like yeast component that's a bit stronger than what American beers have.
Yeah, it's not like a Coors Light.
No, I don't mean American generics. I mean just American beers in general don't have that much yeast component to it. Like a lot of it is focused on the malt and the hops, and the yeast is just kind of there as like a subtle thing. Whereas the yeast flavors actually come out really strong, but not in a bad way.
Almost like a wild yeasting kind of feel.
Yeah, it's just like you'd expect with anything Belgian. It does have some funk.
Yep.
Just right on the nose and in the taste, and it is super sweet, super drinkable.
That's that good stuff.
You can definitely taste the alcohol.
Yeah, it's good shit. So with this, of course, I want to remind you guys to drink responsibly if you're drinking along with us. We want you to be safe out there. Yeah, let's get into it.
All right, C14. So obviously we've already talked about the fact that these 5 decks were each monocolored decks, and that was unique. That was the first time that WOTC had done that. So that was unique when it came out, but it's also unique that all of the commanders were Planeswalkers. This is the first time we've had that from WOTC to be even allowed. And so they did a really good job of taking these Planeswalkers and kind of literally giving us a poster sign of this is what this deck wants to do. So obviously it was unique and people wanted to try that out. But also I think it was probably good for newer players as a jumping on point because they really were given like, hey, take this deck and do these things. So the first thing we're going to talk about is actually what each of these decks wants to do.
Yeah, so this is just like the mini recap of the color wheels and just sort of what these decks and Planeswalkers encompass and stand for.
Yeah, we'll actually get into the specifics of the cards, but just in general, so if we're looking at the white deck, right? It's got tokens, artifacts, and equipment matter, and it's got like, I wouldn't say like a heavy emphasis on board wipes, but it really shows how white has this very kind of specific aptitude for doing board wipes well.
Yeah, I think white has the most board wipes out of any other color.
And generally
they need it.
Yeah, generally the most efficient way to do it as well. So some of the board wipes, make tokens. There's literally like 2, I think, in the deck that do so. So blue in Commander, obviously very good at card draw. That's something that is just going to be there. The removal, we're going to see, heavy removal in Precons. That's just how Wizards have been doing it. And you see that it's primarily in these bounce spells, especially in the board wipes. And then they've got like turn into a frog and ways to, take a commander creature. And I think that these are really heavily focused on enemy commanders and making them useless. You've got like copy, for whatever reason, there's a pretty decent theme of copying. Morph again, and then just like blue in general has these really big finishers. And again, you see that in this deck.
For black, we've got a whole lot of the life matters kind of synergy. So like extort, siphon effects. We've got almost not necessarily a tribal theme, but just a wealth of demons, and just the kind of standard trade your life for whatever your resources are that you need. That's something that black just tends to do. And of course, graveyard shit. So black does what black does.
Yeah, and I also want to add that they also do a lot of sacrifice stuff, which is what my friend Peter did with this deck, and it was
I think it's
awful
a lot of the demon stuff.
Yeah,
like sacrifice.
Yeah, and so the next one we have is red. My man, but it's artifact heavy, artifact removal heavy, And then it does have that graveyard shenanigans, but it's mostly just artifacts, just moving them back and forth out of different zones and stuff.
Yeah, it's not like what black does with graveyards.
Yeah.
Specifically like trading out one artifact for another.
Yeah. And then there's obviously just like high damage either through aggro or just like burn.
And then, of course, we have green, which again has this sort of sub-theme of having the tokens. Green has just an insane wealth of ramp spells.
Yep.
We've got, with those tokens, you need to be able to pump them up and have like overrun effects, things that just allows you to swing in for lethal. And then there's also a pretty decent land sub-theme, a lot of like landfall triggers, things like that. So, mentioned it before, mentioned it again. Let's finally actually talk about the Planeswalker Commanders.
So the first one we have is Nahiri, and it's Nahiri the Lithomancer. So it's 3 white for a Planeswalker, Nahiri. She's a mythic. She comes in with 3 loyalty counters. She has 3 abilities. +2, put a 1/1 white core soldier creature token onto the battlefield. You may attach any equipment you control to it.
So already we've got tokens and equipment just all in one.
Tight.
-2, you may put an equipment card from your hand or graveyard onto the battlefield.
More equipment, a little bit of graveyard shenanigans.
-10, put a colorless equipment artifact token named Stoneforged Blade onto the battlefield. It has indestructible. Equipped creature gets +5/+5 and has double strike. And equip 0.
So this is a massive ultimate in that, 1, it costs a lot. It's going to take a while to get there.
Seriously.
2, it has just like a back-breaking effect, right? Like having that is just saying, I'm presenting a huge threat that you are going to have a hard time removing, right? Indestructible, an equip cost of 0.
Yeah, you can just throw that on anything that comes out.
That's what's crazy. It's not like give one of your creatures this. It's an equipment that'll just stay there that you can use over and
She
over.
just makes the best sword ever.
Yeah.
And so the last line of text on her, and it's an ability that all of these Planeswalkers have, it says, Nahiri the Lithomancer can be your commander.
Yep.
So just blank can be your commander.
Next one, we have the blue Planeswalker. It's Teferi Temporal Archmage. 4 blue for a 5 loyalty Planeswalker Teferi. +1, look at the top 2 cards of your library. Put one of them into your hand and the other on the bottom of your library.
So again, thing the blue loves to do. Top deck manipulation and card advantage.
-1, untap up to 4 target permanents.
That's not the most broken ability ever.
I feel like Teferi does this shit a lot, doesn't he?
So many permanents.
Yep, and then -10, you get an emblem with, you may activate loyalty abilities of Planeswalkers you control on any player's turn anytime you could cast an instant.
Planeswalkers, they are somewhat powerful. Generally only able to activate them once on your turn. And it's an emblem.
So he's wicked good. I like it.
He might even be top tier.
There's a CEDH deck built around him that just abuses his -1 to untap everything you could ever want. Have you ever heard the term Teferi Chainveil? This is the deck.
So next one we have is the black commander. So for the mono black deck, we've got Obnixilis of the Black Oath. So for his +2, each opponent loses 1 life. You gain life equal to the life lost. This way, a little underwhelming compared to all of the other abilities we've read thus far.
Yeah.
-2, put a 5/5 black demon creature token with flying onto the battlefield. You lose 2 life. -8, you get an emblem with pay 1 in a black, sacrifice a creature, you gain X life, and draw X cards, where X is the sacrificed creature's power.
Not bad.
Yeah, I mean, for 5 mana, that's pretty decent overall. I mean, like, his +2 is underwhelming, but...
It's underwhelming, but it is a +2 instead of a +1, so technically it takes him up to his ultimate a little quicker.
Yeah, and his ultimate is lower than what the other 2 have
Yeah.
been.
So he's just more middle of the line.
For the next one, we've got Doretti Scrap Savant.
So it's 3 in a red for a 3 loyalty Planeswalker, Doretti. +2, discard up to 2 cards and draw that many cards. So that's card draw in red, but you just have to discard stuff.
And didn't we say that this deck kind of wants to play at the graveyard a little bit?
Yeah. -2, sacrifice an artifact. If you do, return target artifact card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So that's an easy way to sacrifice a token or some garbage and get some really good stuff back.
Especially if you're throwing it in the bin.
Yeah. -10, you get an emblem with whenever an artifact is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, return that card to the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step.
Pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
So
Doretti's like a solid.
Doretti's super good.
And last but not least, we've got Fray Lease, Land Wars Fury. She's 3 green for a 3 loyalty Planeswalker Fray Lease. +2, put a 1/1 green elf druid creature token onto the battlefield with tap and add 1 green mana to your mana pool. -2, destroy target artifact or enchantment.
This is a very green thing.
Always relevant in EDH.
And -6, draw a card for each green creature you control.
She's just dumping them out.
She's pooping out green 1/1s, and then you get to draw them cards. So I like that a lot too.
We also have just a lot more cycles. So we'll kind of just summarize these ones. So they had legendary creatures that were from the history of Magic that hadn't yet had cards. We had Jazal Goldmane, which is Ajani's brother, and he on his own pretty solid card, but not the most synergistic with the deck. We had Stitcher Geralf and Ghoul-Caller Giza for the blue and black decks respectively. Again, these were characters that had been talked about in just Magic lore. They finally brought to fruition, kind of just those zombie sub-themes. We had Felden of the Third Path, which again, that artifact in red, super dope. And then we had Titania, Protector of Argoth, lands sub-theme. She's insanely strong. She's also just a dope card in general.
And then next we've got legendary creatures that kind of just fit in with the theme of what the deck is doing. So these are kind of, I wouldn't necessarily call them alternative commanders, though that's kind of historically what WOTC does, but they kind of feel like, an extra option that also is synergistic. We start with Kimba Cao Regent, one of them cat guys.
Yeah, she cares about tokens as well as equipment. Solid include.
Then we've got Lorthos, the Tidemaker.
Blue control. Good
And he's a big boy. Taps everything down.
We've also got Drana, Calestria Bloodchief for black.
Yeah, removal plus just weird like black fire breathing.
Yeah, it's like protection or damage kind of stuff going on. Then we've got Bosch Iron Golem, which is an artifact, so it feels a little weird, but the deck wants artifacts. This is for our red deck. And then we've got my dude, Azuri Renegade Leader. He's an elf that likes elves, and green likes elves.
Arguably the best elf commander.
Yeah, next we have the Lieutenant cycle. Each one of these cards has the Lieutenant ability, which whenever you have your commander end them out on the battlefield, you have an additional effect.
Yeah, so the first one we've got is Angelic Field-Marshal, and she gives creatures you control +2/+2 and Vigilance.
And then we've got the Stormchurch Kraken in the blue deck, and it gives +2/+2, and whenever it becomes blocked, you draw 2 cards. I'll just ask hexproof, which is...
Yeah, for black, we've got Demon of Wailing Agonies. He also gives +2/+2, but also whenever he deals combat damage to a player, that player sacrifices a creature.
And next we have Tyrants Familiar. It's 5/5 Flying Haste Dragon, and it gets +2/+2 and has whenever Tyrants Familiar attacks, it deals 7 damage to target creature defending player controls.
Very aggressive. And last we have Thunderfoot Baloth, which... as long as you have your commander, it gets +2/+2, and other creatures you control get +2/+2 and have trample. So
Just
pretty
forever overrun.
Yeah, so pretty dope. Next cycle was the offerings. So we have Benevolent Offering. It's very, very white. So with the offerings, you get 2 effects that you share, each one with a player. So they can be the same player. You can have different players, but you have to basically help your opponent while you're also helping yourself more. So Benevolent Offering... you make spirit tokens, you gain life based on the number of creatures you control, and so you split that up amongst your enemies.
Yeah, so all of these cards, they have 2 abilities, and you can choose different people for each one, but they're repeated between you and whoever you choose.
The next one we've got is Intellectual Offering, which sounds very blue already. You choose an opponent, you and that player draw 3 cards. And then the second one is choose an opponent, untap all non-land permanents you control, and they untap all non-land permanents they control. You're just tapping and drawing cards. Untapping.
So the next one is Infernal Offering. It's 4 and a black for sorcery. And the first one is you and whoever you choose each sacrifice a creature and draw 2 cards. And then the next one is you just get to return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield.
Solid. So the red one is Volcanic Offering. You get to destroy target non-basic land, and whoever you choose gets to do so as well.
Yeah.
And then the other one is you deal 7 damage to a target creature you don't control, and then they also choose a target creature you don't control to also do damage to. So you kind of get more of a benefit off of that one because they both have to be creatures that you don't control.
Last but not least, we've got Sylvan Offering. You hear about this from time to time. You and that player put an XX green tree folk creature token onto play. This is an X and a green spell. And then the second one is you and that player put X11 green elf creature tokens onto the battlefield. So you get kind of a big fatty and a whole bunch of little dinky dudes.
Yeah, so I think this is the only one anybody ever thinks about because it is scalable. So it's good in the beginning of the game and late game. While the other ones, they're just a hard mana cost.
They just do what they do.
Next one on the cycles that we're going to talk about are the Medallions. The Medallions are kind of just insane because ramp is great, but what if you just have to pay less for every spell? And so...
Yeah, you explained why this is better than ramp pretty well in a previous episode.
Right, so just to kind of summarize that, using, say, like a Signet or just something that lets you tap for one only works for one spell on that turn unless you have some way to untap it. So what if you could do that and just reduce the cost of every spell that you play? And that's what these do. So the Pearl Medallion, and they all cost 2 generic mana for just artifact, and then Pearl Medallion is the white one, so white spells you cast cost 1 less to cast.
Sapphire Medallion blue, Jet Medallion black, Ruby Medallion red, and Emerald Medallion is green.
Yeah, so the next and final cycle we've got are the diamonds. And these are similar to the medallions, only they're not as good. They are just mana rocks for 2 mana that just tap for colored mana, which is important.
Is helpful, yeah.
But the only downside is that they all come in tapped.
Yeah, so 2 mana rocks are very good.
Yes.
But having that downside makes them less abusable, even though in general these are going to be more abusable than what the medallions are.
Yeah, these are playable, but they're definitely not the first choices.
So those diamonds are named Marble Diamond, Sky Diamond, Charcoal Diamond, Fire Diamond, and Moss Diamond.
Nice names.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty straight to the point.
Simple. All right, guys, now that we've run through kind of the basics and all the cycles that we've got here, I think it's time to revisit them beers. Today I've been drinking the North Coast Brewing Company Prankster Belgian-Style Golden Ale.
At least when you're not spitting it all
It's a hell of a name if I can get it in my mouth. This is a wonderful beer. It will choke you if you inhale the foam, but I've enjoyed it. It's really mellow. There's not anything that really sticks out to me as like the dominating flavor. It's just kind of funky, which... As you guys know, that's exactly how I like it.
The dominating flavor is funk.
Yep, tame, sweet, and funky.
Oh yeah, it's super good. It's very smooth, very sweet. It's gotten a lot less funky from the beginning, but maybe that's just because I've been drinking on this IPA.
Yeah.
But it's still got that funk.
All right, so in comparison, Gary, you said you don't really have that dominating flavor. The Three Creeps Brewing has the 5 pine chocolate porter that I've been sipping on. This one has the dominating flavor, which is the chocolate. So I think they kind of nailed it on the head there. I love this beer. Like, this is a perfect porter in that you know exactly what you're getting into, and it is consistent. It is delicious. The one downside is that weird kind of alcoholic flavor that you get out of it. And that's not to say that, that's necessarily a bad thing. It's just a bit odd because it starts to open up more flavors afterwards, especially after drinking Garion's, the North Coast Brewing Prankster.
Yeah, it's just a solid porter. I think it's gotten more chocolatey.
I agree.
Yeah,
I was just going to say that. I do taste the alcohol as a burn, but it kind of blends with like the bitter chocolate.
Yeah.
So it doesn't taste like, oh shit, that's a ton of alcohol. You can taste it if you're looking for it, but it's totally like 70-75% cacao chocolate. That's what I'm getting.
Yeah. And now we got the juicy astronaut-y space beer.
Space juice. This is the junior astronaut juice from Illuminated Brewworks. I know, right? So this is just a super... I think it's double dry hopped. It's just a super hoppy IPA, but it's just the most like chill hop ever. It's got a lot of citrus notes. It's got great color. It's super smooth.
And the aroma is just killer.
Anytime we talk about a tame IPA, it's usually because the hops aren't that prevalent. But this one's not that. It's tame because it's not bitter. But the hops are all you taste. You know what I mean? It's like hops, tart, fresh hops. But it doesn't linger super long, and it's not like crazy pucker your tongue bitter.
Yeah, and it also is the most like smooth and mellow of these beers, which is weird. And I feel like the the 5 Pine Chocolate Porter has more like bitter notes that you taste than what the IPA does.
Yeah, 100%.
Beer of the show?
I think so.
Well, I was just hoping you'd cast a vote.
Yes. I.
So Cory's casting his vote for Junior Astronaut Juice.
And you?
I think I like the 5 Pine Chocolate Porter. It's pretty good. The Junior Astronaut Juice is probably my second, which is weird because it's very hoppy. The Belgian, it's good, but it doesn't stand out to me as like, damn, that is crazy good. You know what I mean? It's just a good beer.
Yeah, it is. It's weird to say, but it's kind of one note, and that one note is funk, and so it's different, but it hasn't developed, it hasn't changed. It's super solid, but it is kind of just, when you think of a Belgian-style ale,
it is that.
That's what you think of.
Yeah.
This is actually really hard because the Junior Astronaut does a lot of things well, whereas the 5 Pine does its one thing exceptionally.
Yeah, that's the thing, because I've had chocolate porters, and I think that's a really good chocolate porter, but I don't think I've had an IPA that's quite like this.
That's true.
I definitely have, and I think that's kind of where like my judgment comes, is that chocolate porters, I don't think there's very many that are as good as this and that nail down the one flavor that they're going for as well. And so that's kind of where this kind of takes the edge, but the fact that the Junior Astronaut just has so many good flavors in general, I think kind of raises it up as well. And for an IPA like that, I think that gives it the edge over the porter in this episode.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That's coming from someone who is a chocolate addict. So
The double dry hopped India Pale Ale
Who would have
from
thought? Illuminated Brew
I
Works.
forgot the name.
All right,
I mean, I'm not upset about that. I like that beer too. Yeah.
Yeah, these are all really good.
let's get back into Das Magique.
Yeah, so we just kind of cruised through those last sections because honestly, they weren't very interesting besides the commanders.
Yeah, having Planeswalker Commanders is like, hey, this is insanely different from everything that has led up to this point.
Everything we talk about, you have to kind of put into perspective of this was released in 2014. So your perception of how these looked needs to be, old you, not new you.
Yeah, and along that line, like these were very good about demonstrating what the color
Yeah.
wheel and what the differences between colors was, right? And I think because of this, people started to realize the power level differences in Commander for what the cards were able to do in those colors.
So we've got a little section here that's just sort of our important mentions. These are cards that are either really powerful in general or show up as not necessarily auto includes, but important in a lot of decks that are focused around that theme.
Or just what are essentially just going to be staples, right?
Yeah.
Like we put Sol Ring on this list because it's Sol Ring, duh, right? Commander Sphere as well. Those are cards that I think this is the first time Commander Sphere was printed. And so it's basically an auto include. If you want ramp, you want some card draw, Commander Sphere is just a great card.
And there's no reason not to play it.
Yeah, and it can go in literally every single deck. So those are cards that are like the no-duh idea, right?
Yeah, and just like you guys just said, it's these, you can consider most of these as just staples in their colors just because they're so good at what they do
In that color.
in their colors, because since they're forced to be monocolored, all these green cards can go in any deck that has green.
So primetime,
I wish.
If only.
you can always try.
Yeah, so we already listed Sol Ring, which goes in every deck. Quite good. But the next one we have is Grave Titan.
My favorite Titan.
Arguably the best Titan behind Primetime.
Yeah. I mean, I still... no, every single time I think about the other Titans, I'm just like, no, but that one's also good.
They're all so awesome.
Frost Titan being the worst of them.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, Sun Titan is just insane with, bringing stuff back all the time. But why don't you read Grave Titan real quick and just kind of get into that?
So Grave Titan is 4 black for 6/6 creature giant with Death Touch. Whenever Grave Titan enters the battlefield or attacks, put 2/2/2 black zombie creature tokens onto the battlefield. And like we talked about at the top of the episode, black is really good at graveyard shenanigans and recurring things and sacrificing things, and so just making lots of tokens.
No,
and
they're with
doing
a
stuff.
substantial body. Like,
Oh,
2
yes.
2/2s, you just put 4 power. Like, it's a 6 mana creature that brings 10 power to the table immediately.
And it just keeps going.
Yeah. Next one we have on there is Flicker Wisp, and that was one that I wanted to include just because of all
He's
of the things
so
that,
dope.
Yeah, all of the things that go around Flicker Wisp. Like there's a lot of strategies that utilize Flicker Wisp. So when it enters the battlefield, exile another target permanent, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So if there's so many Flicker shenanigans, and the card Flicker and Flicker Wisp are the reason why, like that is what we call it. There's blink effects and flicker effects, and those differentiate. And this is kind of like the iconic creature that you can
this is
abuse.
the embodiment of it.
I also put Gift of Estates on here because what is the one thing that white is not good at?
Ramp.
Nailed it. Dead on the head. Good job, Garion. You passed this quiz.
Quiz? Unfortunately, this isn't ramp, but it's close. And
It's as close as white
will
usually
take
gets.
what it can get.
Yeah.
It's just a little baby land tax.
Yep.
So if an opponent controls more lands than you, search your library for up to 3 plains cards, reveal them and put them into your hand, then shelf your library. The fact that it names plains is super important because it allows you to get dual lands, and it also is just a sorcery for 1 and white, so it actually allows you, as someone playing white, to get access to those lands, those colors early, which is super, super important because white just struggles in the early game.
The next card we have on here is one that pretty much nobody plays, nobody knows.
It shouldn't be on this list, honestly.
Also Soul Ring again.
So, no, Cyclonic Rift, everybody knows it's probably going to get banned eventually, so fuck that card. It's really good, though.
Yeah, I don't know if we need to keep talking about Cyclonic Rift.
Nope.
It's
Go to the next one.
staple. So the next one we have is Black Sun's Zenith.
Also quick.
So again, this is one that's on the list, not necessarily because of Black Sun Zenith itself, but because of the Sun's Zenith cards. It's a really, really strong cycle for the most part. And Black Sun Zenith is just a different style of board wipe.
Yeah.
Better style.
It is X black for a sorcery. Put X -1/-1 counters on each creature.
So it doesn't target, which is great for, board wipes in general.
Yeah, it gets past indestructible. It gets past hexproof.
And their counters. So even if you don't manage to kill something, you can significantly weaken it, which is tight.
Yeah, and then all the Zeniths have this next line of text, which is shuffle Black Sun Zenith, or whatever Zenith you're playing, into its owner's library. So this is, when we talk about scalability, this is what we're talking about. It's good early game. You could honestly do it for 1 and make some money moves, and then it gets shuffled back in, draw it later, do it for 10, wipe the board, and then keep going.
It's good stuff. Next one we have is Profane Command for X black sorcery. Choose 2. So again, this is going to be part of another cycle, the command cycle. Obviously, there's one that's going to be better than the rest of them. Surprise, surprise. What color is it?
Blue.
There it is. The winner is Cory.
It's always blue. Bro.
It's always blue.
So in the cycle, you get to choose 2, and they'll have 4 effects. So this one is target player loses X life. Return target creature card with converted mana cost X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Target creature gets -X/-X until end of turn. Or up to X target creatures gain fear until end of turn.
This card's good.
So this one, legitimately a very solid card. It can help finish a game. It can help just get rid of whatever the annoying creature is. Obviously having, a reanimator effect is just good in general. And then sometimes you just kill somebody.
Yeah, just like with scalability, especially in Commander, you want variants or options on every card you play since you can only have one ofs.
Yeah. So modal cards like this are just
modal. That's the word I was looking for.
the modal cards are just like super, super great to have. And the fact that it can do all of these different things in one color is just exceptional.
Yeah.
Speaking of just, things that one color does exceptionally, this is not exactly the fit for it.
This is one of the few ways that red can get rid of enchantments.
Yeah.
And it can't even get rid of them.
Yeah. So Chaos Warp, I think we've probably talked about a dozen times at least on this podcast.
Probably because it is one of the few ways red can
Interact with a lot of things.
Yeah. Yeah. So Chaos Warp's 2 in a red. The owner of target permanent shuffles it into their library, then reveals the top card of their library. If it's a permanent card, they put it onto the battlefield. So the fact that it's permanent matters so much because you can get rid of Planeswalkers.
Yep.
You can get rid of enchantments, which red literally cannot do.
Yeah.
And you can just get rid of anything you want.
That's like one of the strictest color things in Magic from the history.
I just want him to break it.
Also in the red deck, we had Dualcaster Mage, which is a card that I love. So it's just Human Wizard, 2/2, flash. When Dualcaster Mage enters the battlefield, copy target instant or sorcery spell. You may choose new targets for those copies. That's not spells that you control, which is, I think, something that's really important. Someone wants to, fuck on you.
Yeah, no one's ever expecting a fork or a copy spell. Everyone's expecting counter, but never the, I want to play that too.
You know what's great though is that I love playing Dualcaster Mage as a counter spell.
Oh yeah,
Like someone tries to counter your shit and you just
satisfying thing.
Not today. So I really wanted to like emphasize that one.
Next up, we got Faithless Looting. You hear about this a lot. 1 mana for draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards.
With flashback. 2 in a red. Yeah, this is a staple. This is about as staple as you can get.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is that red likes to discard 2 cards and draw 2 cards, or discard a card, draw a card. This reverses that, so you at least get to draw and make the decision after that. Plus, it has flashback. It's just the best way that red can do this effect.
Yeah, because this is looting, not rummaging.
Right.
Rummaging is what we usually get in mono red or just red.
Yeah, the fact that we actually get looting in red was just huge. And I mean, this is one of my favorite cards of all time.
Yeah.
Well, and it's the quintessential staple, quote unquote. Like you can call like Kodama's Reach or Cultivate, but there's so many of those that you can kind of interchange some of them depending on how you want
one as
them.
an example, right? Every single time.
Right, but I'm just saying like those ones, technically none of them specifically are a staple because depending on how you're running your green, maybe you change them up. This one, if you're running red, this is literally the best way and cheapest way to do it. So you always put this in the deck because it does exactly what you need at the cheapest rate.
Yeah, and one more that we didn't actually put on here, but I think this was the first printing of it in a commander set anyways, was Solemn Simulacrum.
Oh, so dope.
Enters the battlefield, you ramp, it dies, you draw a card. It's all just a 2/2
Two things
body.
that red just can't do, basically.
So having it in the artifact deck that cares about the graveyard, cares about sacrificing artifacts, bringing them back, I mean,
works out.
as Cory likes to say, banger alert.
Yeah, they made some money moves. Next one we have is Priest of Titania, which is what we refer to as a common mythic. It is 1 and a green for a 1/1 elf druid creature. Tap it and add green to your mana pool for each elf on the battlefield. Wow.
Pretty okay. It is on its own. It's just a little Land War Elves, but when it's not, it's...
This thing's regular tapping for 5-10 mana. It's so easy to make elves.
There's always some way in those decks to untap it.
And the artwork's dope, which is also important.
Yeah, I mean...
This card's just great.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say this is a green staple, but this is one of the most staple elf cards. It's up there with Land War Elves.
Yeah, Priest of Titania is one of the like amusing ones to me because in elf ball styles, you have to spend a decent amount to get to your finisher like Crater Hoof or something like that.
Yeah.
And by doing that, unless you have a way to untap your shit, then you only have like so many
stuff.
that would get buffed. So Priest of Titania says, let me take it.
I'll take the 8.
I will
all of it.
Yeah, I will put the team on my back so you guys can go kill everyone. So next one is just one of my favorite cards, Song of the Dryad. So for 2 and a green, remove target commander from the game.
That's basically what it reads.
But really, you enchant a creature, and that creature becomes a forest.
It's enchant permanent.
Well,
So you can do it on the Planeswalkers.
yeah, which I think was super important for this set in general, that you actually have good Planeswalker removal that wasn't just, I have a creature that can attack.
Yeah, because usually you'd see things like this that things lose their creature types or just become another thing, but it's only on creatures. And so the fact that this is a permanent, just like with Chaos Warp, you can just get rid of whatever you need to get rid of.
Yeah, it's also an enchantment, so it's insanely hard to remove. And that's why when we're talking about Fray at least, having that -2 to get rid of enchantment or permanent is such a relevant ability in Commander, is because artifacts and enchantments are difficult to interact with. So having something like this, especially as someone who plays a shitload of enchantments, like having that, and usually it is used on a creature, and that's kind of like where my slip up is that I always use this as commander removal. Is like the kind of
that is usually the best way to.
But it turns out, also being able to to not destroy, but make useless a planeswalker is such an ridiculously powerful ability. It's just one of those things where some people look at it and like, oh, but you're helping to ramp your opponent. You're giving them. It's like, so what? Path to exile?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like if I path to exile your commander and you couldn't put it in the command zone. It's just gone. It stays in exile.
Way worse.
Yeah. So I'm a fan. Huge fan.
Yeah, I think this one needs a reprint.
So let's talk shop. This was a pretty dope set as far as Commander is concerned, right? Having the monocolor decks that really emphasized what those colors did. Reasonably balanced, in a vacuum, just those ones together. A lot of good things coming around. White actually getting some decent ways to compete in the early game and in the developing stages of the game, and then just that massive token synergy with ways to make that go the next step. Red, having these artifact synergies that were actually integrated with the graveyard and that sort of thing. Having Planeswalker Commanders in general, just kind of insane. What is the comparative power level of this set versus, first, let's just look at the previous sets, right? Commander 2013, we'll ignore Arsenal because it wasn't a real set, and then 2011, right? 2011, pretty cool. 2013, not bad. 2014?
Yeah, I was going to say leading up to 2014, I think these were cool. I think not only did they showcase the color wheel really well and how to solve problems in those colors, because I think that's probably what a lot of people had trouble with. I mean, there's obviously brilliant deck builders, but for a new person getting into EDH, if they want to do a monocolor deck, it is kind of hard. So I think this showcases a way to solve a lot of the problems that each of these colors has. Obviously, from 2015 and beyond, these are going to look different. But like you said, in a vacuum, where they were when they happened, I think they're pretty cool. I really like the fact that they're synergistic. You can kind of pick your play style. Like, I'm playing the green deck, you know?
Yeah, and with that, I think it's amusing that so far these are like the most synergistic decks that had come from Commander. I mean,
For sure.
It's weird that there's like such a generic theme to them and also still that pretty solid synergy going on.
Yeah, I think just being monocolored, like we've talked about, just helps them stay focused. Because you can look at the other earlier sets, and it's like 2 or 3 decks just mishmashed together.
It's almost like they gave you the option to try and do this or that.
And they kind of tried to do that with bringing in like these historical figures. Like, you look at the blue deck, and it's like, hey, you want to play with your graveyard and stuff? It's just like, well, no,
just untap stuff.
Really, yeah. I just want to do like big powerful
because
stuff.
you're limited.
Fairy's good.
Yeah, I think because you're limited to only blue cards, though, the rest of the deck couldn't stray too far. You know what I mean? Like, there's a couple things that you'd probably swap out and be like, that's not what I want.
Right, but look at like the Haleva deck with Nekusar, right? Like 2 very different styles of play.
Yeah.
But it's like, hey, let's also try and support Nekusar and have some like card draw and stuff like that. It's just like, yeah, you want that, but not in the same way that Haleva wants all of her shit.
Yeah, and like if you're playing Teferi, you're just playing blue good stuff. If you're playing Fray, it's just green good stuff. Like, you can't get crazier than that.
I do like, though, that they did have those on-theme legendaries that you could, if you're like, okay, Planeswalkers, let's say that they're mildly frustrating, right, to play in a command zone, to play from the command zone, because Planeswalkers are frustratingly difficult to kill sometimes. And if the board's not working together, then they just sit forever. They tick up. Any damage that you do and they're still ticking up and they're surviving is just wasted damage that you could be redirected elsewhere. So it's just kind of like, is having the commanders in the command zone worth it? Is that something that should be repeated? Obviously it was. Regardless of public opinion on that. I don't know, is it too far?
Yeah, I think they slow down games just so much because instead of killing your opponent, you have to take time and kill them. And I think that's actually what the black deck is best at because it makes flyers and big flyers. It's really good at getting rid of all the other planeswalkers and keeping them in check.
But as the red player, like, you kind of get sorted into, you're the one who has to take care of this, we'll take care of, other threats, which
yeah, I think
like red deck has the dragon and shit, demons.
Just how we said that they're focused, I think they're also limited by that. And I like planeswalkers. I don't like them as commanders.
Agreed.
I think that my biggest issue is that there's an uneven distribution of what the ultimates are.
Yeah.
And having, let's just use Teferi's because it's the most broken, right? If you get that emblem, it is an emblem, which means that every time you next cast Teferi, it's benefiting off of that.
Oh yeah, you can just keep chaining it and just going off.
Right, and same with Nahiri's, right? Like, you can ultimate at 10 and still be able to cast her and get continual benefits off of what's going on there, right? And that's stupidly powerful. Like, an emblem that is that uneven, as Teferi's is, when compared to the rest of the Planeswalkers' abilities. Like, if they all had emblems, it might be a little bit different because then their ultimate really continually impacts the board in a similar way. But something that's just as backbreaking as having an emblem that makes it so the next time you cast your commander, it's just better.
Yeah, I think the blue deck is, surprise, surprise, way better than the other ones. And so in that regard, they weren't balanced as well as in sets that would come after it. But they're trying. They're working on it. And so I think it's overall it's an okay like balance of what they had going. They tried their best. They had some good cards in there. They just gave most of the good ones to blue.
Yeah, playing against even one person who's playing like a Super Friends kind of thing and they pop out a couple Planeswalkers, it feels like, oh my God, this is one of these games. And if everybody has that capability, I've never played these decks in a vacuum together with each other, but I just can't imagine that the games would be very exciting. You know, they do look like they do a lot of fun stuff. I think if you swapped out the commanders with stuff with some legendary creatures that did similar things, it would be fun.
They include one in each of these decks.
I think that's the way that they should be played, just for better gameplay. But
so you're saying that Planeswalker Commanders, not a great thing.
Not fun.
Obviously, the next question was just to be, is it something that they should repeat? I mean, they already did. Do you think that has impacted the game in a similar way?
I think when they went back to Planeswalker Commanders, they didn't balance them as much, but they opened up new strategies for people in different ways. Like if you just look at Jund, Windgrace, like lands matter stuff, or
Windgrace is powerful.
Yeah, Windgrace is super good. Or just Amanatu, just Esper bounce. Like that's something.
It wasn't just bounce though. It was like top deck manipulation.
Top deck. Yeah, it was.
Super.
They were very interesting cards. I just don't like them in the command zone, just because of all the reasons that we've talked about. They just slow down games. I wouldn't say they bloat the game up, but that's kind of what they do. They just...
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good description of it, because
it's
not that it's hard to say they don't impact it negatively, because there's obviously all the things we've talked about, but they just kind of make a game feel way more than it is.
Yeah, because they can do so much, and they're just a pain in the ass to kill. You just have to go out of your way just enough.
Yeah, and that slows the game down. Yeah. So should that then limit play groups and what people do, as far as like allowing the non-commander Planeswalkers, the ones that don't specifically say they can be used as Planeswalkers, is there like, do you guys think that either personally or just in general for commander that people should not allow those cards that don't say that they can't be used as a Planeswalker as commander to be used in the command zone? Like if you were to take just a random Planeswalker and say, I'm building the deck around it.
That's a hard one, because I think my mentality has always been like, let your dudes do what they want to do. Even if you don't like it, just like harbor that in your soul. And just be like, fuck this.
So you're saying let it fester and build until you explode.
Yes. No, I mean, it's always just been like, if you don't like it, it's probably only going to be one game, right? If it comes to that point, you can always...
excruciatingly long.
Yeah, 4 or 5 hour game. You can always tell that person like, hey, that wasn't super fun. Can we only play that like once or twice a night or whatever? You know, I think that works out a lot with more than just Planeswalker decks. But I can definitely see if a play group is like really leaning on it and a lot of people are doing it in your play group, I can see it being a problem. But I mean, the play group thing, like we've talked about, your meta, like it's so personal. You know what I mean? If you like playing like that and all your buddies like playing like that, then fuck it, man. You got 10 hours to play 2 commander games, go do it. But I don't necessarily think that commander as a whole should adopt all Planeswalkers as commanders.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, do you think the play group should focus down and limit it? I mean, obviously with our play group, it's not necessarily anything goes, but we definitely have like, there's a line you shall not cross.
Land destruction, is that what it is?
Unfortunately, yes.
Correct, I've been waiting.
I'm okay with Planeswalkers as commanders. I personally don't like it. I don't think it's very fun to play with or against. But I mean, they're not like crazy broken.
Yeah, it's not so most of them out there that it's unbeatable. It's really when there's 4 of them that it's really unbearable.
It's just the chunk of time that you can't ever get back.
Yeah. I mean, realistically, yeah. And that's kind of where my stance is that, sure, fine, try it once. Like, definitely, like, I'm always going to try things at least once, right? Whether it be beer or Magic. Like, I won't say no unless it really impacts how it affects everyone. And playing in a game with just 2 Planeswalker Commanders drags it out so much. Like even if it's just a half an hour, like you don't realize how much you can do in a half an hour until you're sitting there waiting on a game to finish that you feel should have been over already.
Well, here's what I'll say, and maybe this will change our perspectives. I think these commanders or these Planeswalkers as commanders are okay, right? They're hard.
4 out of 5.
4 out of 5. They're okay as commanders only because they're 6 mana, right?
5,
when people
6,
start using all commanders and they start lowering that down to 4 and 3 mana planeswalkers that can be used as commanders that just never fucking go away, I could see that as being like just too, not even brutal. I wanted to say brutal, but it's not brutal. It's not overpowered. It's just annoying and like grinding and grating on your gameplay.
3 mana to Fray.
Yeah, fuck that guy. Like, can you imagine? Or Oko. Like, Oko's technically not banned in Commander, so you know that could be your commander if you allow that. I don't know that Oko is the most powerful thing in a 4-player, 5-player format, but still, I think depending on which planeswalkers you use, it could make it even more annoying. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not really for limiting a play group just because you don't like it. But if everybody at the table except the one dude who built the Planeswalker deck knows that it's too long and annoying, then that's the time that you as a group should sit down and just be like, yo, Cory, listen.
Okay. Next question. Last question. Was this Commander 2014 a successful product? And I guess tied into that, is this something that Wizards should not
revisit?
replicate? Kind of, but like, is it something that they should kind of mirror as time goes on?
I would love if they went back to monocolor decks and just dove deep into like staples, and that's all the deck was in like a synergistic, fun way.
Yeah.
You know. But overall, I think this did succeed in some ways, and it didn't do as much as a lot of people wanted Wizards to do in other ways. I think having Planeswalkers that we can finally play as our commander, that's cool. Whether you like it or not, it's different.
Yeah, it's weird that like the thing that was the most hype about the set ended up being the most frustrating part about it.
Yeah, people didn't know what they wanted until they got in there. Like, oh,
yeah, because nobody could have guessed how shitty it would have been until they try it, you know?
Yeah, I think just having good reprints and having those cards that we hadn't gotten yet, I think that's a solid plus. But the fact that some of these decks are way underpowered compared to their counterparts, it's upsetting and it doesn't feel fun. So I think they dropped the ball in that regard. We could talk about Teferi all we want, but Blues they made it too good. So I think overall, it's okay.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what the numbers of units sold were, so I don't know if we can definitively call it a success or not. I'm sure they did okay since they continued to go.
And they continue to go up in price, but I mean, limited stock is limited stock, right?
But as far as like, do I like the product? Should they do it more? I don't think they should do the Planeswalkers. I think the community as a whole kind of decided that wasn't a good idea.
Yeah, I think the first round we were like, okay, let's get some more. Yeah. And then we got the second batch and we're like, okay, never mind.
Yeah. Having the 3-colored Planeswalker Commanders was just kind of, it seemed like it was going to be cool. Again, it was just like, okay, it's not as limited. It's not like, oh, this is obviously going to have, its own thing. But like, even as someone who has a couple of those decks, it's like, no, I'm not playing the Planeswalkers, the Commander, because it is unfun. It's just like, I don't know, slow to win, slow to like.
Yeah, I think it might also be the fact that they kind of screwed everyone over reprint wise with those decks. It might just soured everything about it.
Yeah. I think it would be really cool if they did another monocolored series, though, especially if they almost revisit some of the lesser known mechanics for that color. You know what I mean? Where it's not like, oh, green's going to be elves and trample. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if they did
that'd be super cool.
Kind of out there shit where you're like, oh, damn, and printed like a new legendary that you're like, damn, this guy,
anti-flying and land destruction.
Okay.
Let's do it. Yeah. I mean, I think something like that would be really cool. I would certainly buy something like that, yeah.
So we all agree, mostly successful, but some major drawbacks.
Not our favorite. Yeah, I think overall we all kind of sit on the same spectrum. WOTC, if you're listening, let's do another monocolored series and try and make it a little different. But thank you guys for listening. I think that kind of wraps up the discussion on the monocolored C14 decks. Hopefully we will get around to the C15, 16, 17 here sometime in the next year.
Yeah, those are all decks that we bought we played.
Yeah,
we played
these are
against.
more
We have
familiar.
a lot more hands-on time with all of those.
They're more
decks.
relevant to what we're doing in this day and age. Unfortunately, this year is going to be a lot of stuff going on release-wise, so
Which
we're
is
going to try
part
and fit
of
it
why
in.
we're trying to catch up, so
Yeah.
we can actually use this as a reference for the future.
The new stuff coming out, yeah.
But for now, thank you for listening. As always, we really do appreciate the feedback. Like we said at the beginning of the show, we do have that survey if you can go fill that out.
It'll literally take you like a minute and a half if you're kind of quick. It's 10 questions. So stay tuned for all that. Hopefully we are timely on all those episodes. And as we like to say on this podcast,
Have fun.
And enjoy
Them beers.